Hey everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome back to HBCU-DAP's virtual workshop series. For those of us that are returning for this semester, we welcome you back and we hope that the other sessions were great for you. For those that are just now joining us, we hope that the content we put together is good for you and that you are able to use this information for your own interviews.
All right, so we want to go through a brief disclosure statement, and I first want to apologize. I'm recovering from a slight cold. But participation in this webinar does not guarantee admission into any graduate program, including the University of Michigan. Our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect the opinion of any university or institution. This presentation belongs to HBCU-DAP and is not intended for duplication, distribution, or monetization.
So again, for those of you that have been following us from the beginning, we have kind of went over how to pick a school, how to pick a program, how to actually apply and build the materials. So we have gone over this list, the things that you typically need for a graduate school application. So congratulations to those of you that have completed the applications. Congratulations to those of you that are applying next year. And if you have an interview, we hope that this is useful. If you don't have an interview yet, that's fine, but this will still be useful information for once you get your interview.
All right, so essentially we want to go through a brief overview of the interview weekend. And so most interview weekends consist of faculty interviews, a social hour, as well as research student organization sessions where they're kind of giving more about what are the student organizations there for graduate students and the research that's happening there.
So faculty interviews will be the main event of this session today, but just generally, this is a time for you to identify potential faculty mentors that you will rotate with once you get into your program or potentially join their lab. So you're going to learn more about their research. They'll learn something about you, but this is basically your time to determine if this is a good mentor-mentee fit for you. So not only are they interviewing you, you are interviewing them to make sure that the program and the faculty member is a good fit for you.
All right, and so next is social hours. So this basically gives you time to network with other faculty, maybe the people that you were interested in interviewing with, or the faculty that you're interested in you weren't able to get an interview at the social hour. They can come, and that gives you an opportunity to interact with them. But also, it gives you a good time to interact with other students that are currently in the program. And so there you can kind of network and kind of facilitate any of the questions that you have about the program, as well as their experience at the graduate school. You can do that during the social hour.
And then lastly, the research and student org session. So this is kind of an optional session. There was only a couple interviews that I went on that actually had this. And it depends on the length of your interview, right? But some, if you go for an entire weekend, some people will have a research or student org session. Again, like Tony said, you learn about the graduate student organizations. You can learn about other research that's happening in the program or the department, especially if it's an umbrella program. You get the opportunity to look at the other departments under the umbrella and their research. And again, this is another opportunity for you to network with faculty, staff, and students. So again, our main focus is going to be faculty interviews. So we'll kind of get into how to prepare you for the faculty interview portion.
All right. So essentially, you have questions that you basically want to ask during the interview. So typically, interviews will run very different ways depending on the person that you're interviewing with, as well as kind of the style of each program or interview weekend that you have. But basically, we kind of have sat here and divided them up into 3 different categories. So there are questions that you want to ask about the program, questions specific to the faculty that you're interviewing, and then questions that you would want to ask the graduate student. So if you would like, take a second to jot down a few of the questions that you'd want to ask in each of these categories.
And then we'll come back in and we'll kind of give you some topics that we think are important, at least for basics of what you should be asking. So now that you've had some time to think about some questions that you may have during the interview weekend, we'll kind of give you some discussion topics. So for the host program, so this kind of depends on if you're applying directly to a department or a program, but whether it's a department or a program, you have the opportunity to talk to people that are actually over the program and talk about some things that may be important to you. So maybe you want to talk to them about diversity in the department and what efforts they have to increase diversity, what the curriculum looks like for a student that's entering the department, and any benefits outside of a stipend, like health insurance, dental coverage, legal fees. These things vary depending on institution, but you definitely can ask the people that are over the program. They'll have a better idea of what's available for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably best to think of the things that you may know about other programs, but aren't necessarily on the website or things like that.
Right. And again, if you have been following us, we did a session we talked about when you pick your program or interest, things that are important to you.
Yep.
So you can kind of use that list to help build your questions because you want to still make sure that this is a fit for you.
Right. All right. And so some of the questions that you would ask the faculty that you're interested in kind of working with in graduate school is first and foremost is their mentoring style. So your faculty mentor kind of in graduate school is kind of like someone that you're going to work very closely with for an extended amount of time. And so getting kind of those questions of how do you mentor, what do you expect of your graduate students, things like that, as well as funding or support, like what are the current research projects in the lab, things like that. You can also ask, I think, do they require their students to teach? Or are their students allowed to do any types of internships during graduate school? I think that's another question that people maybe wait or don't ask, but kind of are curious about. And so kind of taking that time to ask faculty kind of whatever question you have in that moment, I don't think that they're necessarily, well, they're actually maybe wrong questions, but
there's wrong ways to ask questions. So for example, for mentoring style, like you may want to ask a vague question like, what is your typical mentoring style? Instead of saying, are you a micromanager? Are you going to be asking me where I am every day? And but that's a mentoring style. So you have micromanagers, you have people that are very hands-off, and then you have people that adapt to their student style. So I've told this story before, but when I joined my lab, my mentor asked me how I like to be mentored. And me and Tony have both went to the mentoring workshop with our mentors too. So you kind of want to see what their responses are. It might not always be the answer that you want, but you definitely want to see how they answer these questions. And if it kind of doesn't sit with you, that may not be someone that you want to work with if it's not your mentoring style.
Right. No, and I think that that's something that you need to also take into consideration if that's a school that you're definitely interested in.
And again, you interview like 3 to 5 faculty members on it. So it's not like you're stuck with those 5, but if that's someone that's high on your list, you definitely want to ask the important questions for you.
Right.
Don't ask for like vacation time. Don't ask policies about that till you get there. I will say that's not a bad question, but you don't want to ask too much of a detailed question. And then they're like, why is this person asking all this? Like they already here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's true.
But this is just my opinion. And then lastly, so I will say this, graduate students are probably your best resource when you interview because they will be as honest with you as they can because there's really nothing to lose.
No.
To being honest with prospective students. So you might want to ask them if they have experiences with faculty that you're interested in the department. So
I almost would certainly always recommend if anyone's interested in working with a faculty member to ask graduate students about.
Oh yes, I thought you were gonna say don't say that, but yes,
no, I would.
That would have been helpful for me. I didn't ask that question when I interviewed, but I rotated with someone that I could have asked about, and it didn't end up in the best rotation, which is fine because every rotation is not going to be a great rotation.
Right.
But if I would have asked those questions, I could have rotated with somebody else that I knew that was going to be a better fit, right? You can also ask about student organizations, whether they're tied to the program you're applying to or whether they're just grad student programs in general. And then social life. So this one is kind of like you don't want to ask too much detail, but you still want to know, is there room for you to have a social life? And, what are typical things that grad students do that are in this program or department? So, if people are saying that they're working 7 days a week from 9 to 5 and, nobody's really having balance, you might want to kind of gauge that and see, how are the students happy here?
Yeah, and even if there's a student or two that is doing that, maybe that's a lab and not necessarily the entire program.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think kind of looking to see what type of activities either the graduate students kind of are involved in as a group, but also kind of what things within the city that they live in are there for them to do. Yeah, graduate students are probably the best resource during interview weekend to ask questions about because they're the
Definitely is.
ones kind of going through the process of what you're about to kind of go through.
Right. Most of the faculty members, they did this process 10, 15, 20 years
Yeah.
ago, so things change so much. So grad students are at least your most recent resource. So you have some things to think about, but things to consider while you're creating this list for yourself. I think my most important tip for the interview part is research the faculty member that you're interviewing with. You usually get a list of faculty that will be interviewing you, whether it's the week before or a couple of days before. That's fine. Do a quick little PubMed search or
You do it on
Google
your
search. Their websites aren't usually that updated, but PubMed is a great place to start. And just see what research they're doing. Because even if you're not interested fully in their research, it's a talking point.
Mhm.
Faculty definitely want to know that you've done your research. It's going to look like you want to be here, that you're dedicated to this grad school lifestyle. So just in case you get dead space, you're like, oh, I see that you published a paper in 2016 on this receptor. How did you get into that type of work? Things like that, just to have a talking point and to show interest.
Yeah, I think there was a professor interviewing me. I had no idea why this professor was interviewing me because it had nothing to do with this topic. But she saw that I did something and was kind of just curious about it. And luckily, I interviewed her and asked her about her written paper, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore." But then she still told me about the project. So
Right.
it's kind of like being able to fill that space and having kind of those cards in the back of your pocket of, okay, I know who it is that I'm talking to, because they know who they're talking to when they're kind of talking to you. So doing your due diligence is always on the better end.
Ask the questions that are important to you. So again, not just the research questions, but if this is a potential faculty member, you want to ask questions that are important to you while you're on this journey with that mentor. Again, grad students will give you the most honest answers probably out of anyone. And not because people are trying to lie to you, but the graduate students know more because they are current graduate students. So they'll be able to give you better insight.
Yep. I mean, they're going to be the ones that, like I said, are going through what it is that you're basically about to go through. So although there are some programs that probably have some changes, ultimately the graduate students are probably the best resource for anything.
They'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then you'll be able to make a fair decision.
Yep.
And then lastly is to have your elevator pitch ready. And this is not just for the actual interview part, but the social hour, the networking events, you definitely want to have your elevator pitch ready for those networking events.
Yep. So speaking of elevator pitch, so an elevator pitch is basically a short speech to inform and gauge interest of new connections. And so essentially there are a list of questions that one can use to then go about forming their elevator pitch. So they're listed here. 1, who am I? 2, what do I do? 3, why and how is this significant or valuable? 4, what do I want the listener or whoever I'm speaking to remember? And then 5, what are my goals? So I think we're going to take, this should all basically go to be about somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds. And so what I want you to do now is take a second to basically go through and answer these questions and try to formulate what your elevator pitch would be.
And then we'll come back and we'll give you an idea of what an elevator pitch should sound like.
All right, so now we're going to role play basically a situation where we would use our elevator pitch. Hey, can you hold the elevator, please? Thanks.
Hey, I'm Sierra. How are you?
Hi, Sierra. I'm Tony.
Tony, what do you do, Tony?
Yeah, so I'm a researcher here, a graduate student. I study chronic pain. What about you?
I'm a third-year graduate student here as well. I work in Dr. Lumang's lab, and I study the interaction between the immune system and the progression of type 2 diabetes.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Is that an animal model? Or?
So I do animal and I do human models, so predominantly mouse models, but sometimes, we get human samples to do the same kind of work. So.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm mainly in humans. I primarily look at fMRI. data and basically use that to kind of figure out what's going on with people that have chronic pain.
Cool. And what are your future plans?
Yeah, so basically, I hope to graduate probably soon, within the next couple of months, and I'll probably stay in academia, do a postdoc.
Sounds good.
What about you?
I'm not sure yet, but I probably go in industry. Academia is probably not the route for me, so I'm thinking about doing an internship while I'm in grad school and then going on to industry when I'm finished.
Oh, cool. That's really cool. So, really excited to hear about some of your work.
Maybe it was nice meeting you. Hopefully we'll run into each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So in our role play, we kind of simulated how it works when you're in an interview setting. So we kind of did the back and forth because that's how it usually goes when you're interviewing. Unless someone says, tell me about yourself, then you can do your whole spiel. That should be 30 to 60 seconds. But also we want to touch base on why we explain what we do and the vague terms that we use. So in a normal setting, you don't know someone's qualifications or education or how much they know about your field, even if you're talking to another researcher. So you kind of want to start as basic as possible and then give people the option to ask questions of things that they might not understand.
Yeah, I think kind of starting at the most general, like I do biology or I study kind of behavioral pharmacology is like the surface level. And so then if they're kind of interested or they're more familiar, then they'll ask you more of a specific question of like, okay, well, what did you study? What animal model did you do? What type of behavior were you studying? Those types of things. The thing is when you kind of assume that someone has the knowledge, they don't really understand what you're talking about. And so it's harder to kind of then bring somebody up to speed that way. So definitely kind of starting surface and then kind of going into detail. Definitely will help.
So, for example, I told Tony, I said that I study the interplay between the immune system and the progression of type 2 diabetes. But if I was talking to someone that was already in the obesity field, I would say I study this specific receptor in macrophages and see how it contributes to the progression of type 2 diabetes. You see how like those are two separate different things. If I'm talking to someone that's in the business school, they don't know nothing about no receptors I'm talking about. And I'm generalizing, but they don't study that. So if I was to like name out this receptor, they might lose interest and might not ask follow-up questions. So it kind of might leave a dead space for you.
Yeah. And so when you're talking to some professors, if you've looked up your professor and you know that like, they study the same receptor, then it may be okay to go in and talk about that. But usually, if they aren't in the same field, I would kind of still keep it surface and then let them ask you questions.
Right. So you'll have different variations of your elevator pitch. So you'll have the elevator pitch, which is 30 to 60 seconds, just to introduce yourself and what you do. But then, like relating to this comment, he has an elevator pitch, an escalator pitch, and a stairway pitch. So you're on the escalator longer than the elevator. You're on the stairway longer than anything else. So it kind of just depends on who you're talking to, how long your elevator pitch may be. So just keep that in mind and be prepared for questions and be prepared to answer those questions. So now we're going to go into interview attire. So you have the attire for the actual interview, and then we'll also go a little bit into what you should wear for the social hour, and then for the optional networking event that you may have with student orgs and other researchers. So we're going to give you a quick little fashion show of business casual and business attire, or business professional, I'm sorry. So business professional is what you primarily want to wear for your faculty interviews. But if you do not have business professional, you can wear business casual. So we'll kind of give you different options that you can wear if you don't have business professional too. So this is an example of business casual. I have on a nice blouse. This doesn't necessarily have to be a neutral color, but if you do a color at the top, I would definitely do a neutral pant. So I have on my black slacks that are not chinos. You can do chinos if you want to stop at the ankle, but if you have black slacks or any other colored slacks, also have on a nice black flat shoe. So you definitely don't want to wear 6-inch heels to an interview. You're going to be doing a lot of walking, so I would recommend, regardless of what you wear, have a nice pair of flat shoes for you to wear. If you're going to wear a heel, don't go more than 2.5 inches.
All right, so an option for business casual is basically to have any type of collared shirt, whether it be a button down like this one or even a polo You could basically wear either of these options, whether it be like a student organization meeting or a social event. But basically, any one of those, having them ironed or cleaned or pressed is totally fine. I think, and then having them match with a pair of maybe slacks or khaki pants, totally up to you. If you wear a belt, you can definitely tuck it in. However, if you don't have a belt, you also have the option of wearing your shirt out. That's also still up to personal preference. And then I have a pair of basically nice dress shoes. Some people actually recommend having hard bottom shoes. Other people basically have a nice pair of shoes that are comfortable. The main thing that you want to make sure is that you will be walking a lot for the interview. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable if you do decide to wear like a new pair of shoes or something like that. The other thing that I kind of like try to match is my belt and my shoes. So like if I have on a brown belt, a brown shoe, a black belt, and a brown shoe. And then the last thing to kind of just take on the new business casual to like the next level, I think is a nice thing to always have is a good blazer. So if you basically you could wear it with your collared shirt or your button down. And I mean, basically, it can go for any situation, and it just kind of dresses up the look a little bit more, so to be more professional. And maybe if you're cold or it's chilly there, this is a great way to kind of combat some of that cold weather.
So for my professional wear, I chose to wear a two-piece suit. It is a neutral color, so if you decide that you are going to go suit, I would do a neutral color, gray or black. I still have on my flat shoes because again, I'm going to be walking all day. I want to be comfortable. If you decide to wear a heel again, wear something 2 inches or less. Underneath, I actually have on a black tank top, but you can also opt to do a button-up shirt or just a solid color shirt. If you want to do a pop of color here, that's fine. But I would keep the the suit color neutral. Also, my hair has been straight the entire session, but so when I interviewed, I had natural curly hair with an undercut. I opted to straighten my hair for my interviews, and this is something that you may want to consider depending on how you wear your hair. Again, be comfortable with who you are. As long as it's neat, you can wear your hair how you like. But that's just what I chose to do for my interviews, because of course there still is discrimination based on hair. So just think about those things when you decide what you're going to wear for your professional attire, and how you're going to wear your hair during your interview weekend. And then also, I'll be very minimum with jewelry. This is for people that wear jewelry, however you identify. So I have on a simple necklace, which is fine. But I also have on stud earrings, so I'm not going to wear my big hoop earrings or anything that's super flashy. I just kind of want to keep it neutral and professional.
Alright, so basically if you're going through an interview and you want to look business professional, then I think it's very good, or a nice option is basically to wear a suit. And so with that, you can wear basically a tie or no tie depending on your comfortability. You can wear a bow tie if you like, or a necktie. It doesn't really matter as long as it's tied nicely and looks neat. I think the other thing is basically you have your suit jacket. Basically, doesn't have to be necessarily tailored fit to be super tight, but as long as you feel comfortable, you want to make sure also that it's clean. And then you have your matching suit pants that go with it. And then I still have on, once again, my brown belt with my brown shoes. But essentially what you want is just a clean kind of suit look with a button-down shirt underneath. That makes it look very professional, I think, and pretty well done. Any other questions that you have, feel free to enter into the Twitter chat. But essentially, that's kind of it.
So now that we've come to the end of the session, we hope that you have some things to take away and help prepare you for what you're about to jump into in a couple weeks for interview weekend. The first and probably most important information or tip to be successful with the interview is to send a thank you email to your interviewers. I know it probably seems like something that you wouldn't do, but it shows that you appreciate the people taking time out of their schedule to come and interview with you. And they may remember you. A lot of people probably don't do this, so you might be the only person they interviewed that said, thank you for taking the time out to talk with me during interview weekend. And they might have some, you have somebody to advocate for you sometimes.
Yep. Gratitude. Make sure that you dress appropriately. So basically, for your interviews, if you can, professional dress, suit and tie if you can do it, and then business casual if you cannot. I think business casual kind of can lead to any opportunity that you have, whether it be a social event, or interview, or just kind of one of the student organization sessions. And then casual if you just have free time, to kind of go about and explore, like a campus tour, anything like that. But always remember that you are networking and kind of someone's always watching or looking at you. The other thing that you probably should do, or not probably, you definitely should do, is practice your elevator speech. So basically, what you want to do is practice each of the different versions of your elevator speech, so that you can kind of network and interact with multiple people at different levels for multiple things.
And your elevator speech does not have to just be for your research or for academics. You can have elevator speech about, just who you are outside of the academy. I've met some really good friends during interview weekends. We didn't end up going to the same school, but we've stayed friends since then. So it kind of gives you a way to introduce yourself to new people and make new connections, whether it's academic or not. And then always remember that you are also interviewing the program. So you're trying to see if this is a fit for you. So this should make it a little less tense for you. It did for me, because I felt like, okay, you asked me to come interview here. You want me to be here. So now it's my turn to see if I actually want to be here. So it made me a little less nervous, even though I was definitely nervous going to my first interview. They're actually not that bad. And then always, always, always be professional. Like Tony said, every single part of interview weekend is part of the interview. The grad student that's hosting you, a lot of times they ask for input about, your behavior during the social events and things like that. So regardless of who you meet, where you are, always be professional, and always be yourself.
Yeah, that's the best person to always be.
Yeah, because you want to make sure that the place you're going accepts you for you, and that you don't have to do too much bending and breaking to actually fit in there. And then this is not on here. Maybe it's a given, but maybe it's not. If you don't have business cards or a CV printed out, print out your CV and your business cards. I know most people will have your CV when they interview you, but if someone just happens to ask you if you have your CV, if they don't have it, you'll have it with you. And then business cards are always good when you network.
And don't hesitate if there's faculty that you want to reach out to that you didn't get a chance to get an interview with, to reach out to them while you're there. Sometimes faculty will take time to meet you for coffee or something like that.
Yeah. So just to give you over the application process, again, for 1 through 3, we kind of got you up to the point of interviews. So interviews usually happen between the second week of January and sometime until March. Some of you may have applications that are actually not due yet. I know there are some institutions where March is the application deadline. So you kind of have some time to, practice your elevator speech and get ready for your interviews. And then April 15th is the last day for most institutions for you to accept or decline an offer. So you have some time. You know how to prepare for your interview now. You should be more confident. You should be confident regardless. You didn't get an interview or anything. You worked hard for your interview. And this is just your time to see which of these institutions you want to be at.
So basically, contact us if you have any questions. You can start a Twitter chat at #HBCU-DAP and reach us on Twitter at HBCU_DAP, our Instagram page at HBCU-DAP, and then our website. Subscribe so that you can receive information that we send out in our newsletters at HBCU-DAP.com.
And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us, whether through email, Twitter, Instagram, through the website. Just reach out to us, especially if you have any specific questions about interview attire and elevator pitches that may be a little personal. You can always reach out to us. You'll be talking to either myself or Tony, so we can give you more detailed opinions that we have. If you have a specific question about a specific item, like you want to send us a picture of, like, should I wear this dress for the actual interview portion, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll definitely help you decide what's best for you during your interview. So Thanks for joining us for session 4. Hope to see you again for session 5.
Good luck.